finishers and factions catching action.
Right. Welcome everyone to another episode of Finishers and Factions Goes NXT with myself, Rich, and with my good homeboy, Adam.
Hi there, everyone. And tonight, TNA. It's because we've literally just been discussing TNA. I've fucked that up already. Anyway, NXT took place from Orlando, Florida, in the WWE Performance Center for the second week in a row, and this is the last NXT before Vengeance Day this Saturday.
And that's definitely a pay-per-view I'm going to be looking forward to watching at some point over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of interesting matches, and as we found out from this week's NXT, they weren't done adding value to it.
No,
Having said that, we'll jump straight in as NXT did. It's one of my favourite ways for wrestling promotions to start their shows with an actual match. We went straight in with Bayley versus Cora Jade.
Which is basically a revenge match from last week, to be fair. It was kind of given to us due to the actions of the two of those superstars previously.
Yes, most definitely. Jade ran in during Bayley's match last week, and pretty much, well, no, it wasn't even during a match last week. It was during the triple threat for the Women's NXT Championship sort of contenders summit or whatever they called it last week. I forget. Cora Jade has been feeling a bit jilted over the last few weeks. We've especially as her current friend Roxanne Perez has been taking small digs at her whenever she can feasibly work one of those in.
I mean, Roxanne Perez seems to be taking digs and jabs at everyone at the moment. Mainly at Bayley, though, to be fair. Like, where you see one, you see the other. Which is where it seems to be going. No matter where Bayley goes, you get Roxanne Perez.
Yeah, and this match was no different. I mean, before we even got to that point, we saw a lot of sort of Cora Jade running away. I've referred to it, and a lot more sort of older wrestleheads will refer to it as being a chicken shit heel, basically running away from the fight rather than engaging in it.
Yeah, which is something we've grown to kind of see from Cora Jade an awful lot, to be fair. Unless she is on what looks like to be the winning side, she is not going to play fair.
Yeah, definitely. And Bayley was definitely sort of coming in hot on this match as, she still wasn't very happy about what had happened last week. And Bayley still consistently managing to appear on every weekly television episode of either Raw, NXT, and SmackDown. I'm not even keeping track anymore of how many episodes
on every episode of televised programming, including PLEs, for the last pretty much month.
So we can, well, it can. It definitely can't be said that she doesn't put the hours in, I suppose.
And I'm not paying her her flight bill, because that's going to start adding up eventually.
Well, yeah, I mean, we went from Raw the night before in Tennessee to have to get all the way to Florida. It was that ain't an easy trip to make in 24 hours.
No, it's not at all. And then obviously we're guessing that she'll probably be at SmackDown this week as well, which I really don't want to kind of throw too much in there. But if she appears at SmackDown and then she has to get to Vengeance Day as well, obviously she's got herself a match there, she's going to be getting tired soon.
Yeah, definitely. WWE are definitely making that woman work for her money recently. But somebody else that made the trip from Tennessee to Florida this week was Roxanne Perez. As we mentioned, you don't see one without the other. You don't see Perez without Bailey and the other way around. This time it was no different, except we had Roxanne Perez dressed up as Bailey, or more accurately, I think they
Classic
referred to it
Bailey.
as classic Bailey. I think a lot of people know her as sort of the hugger Bailey. This was the sweeter than sweet baby face that she had before she had a heel turn and sort of molded into whatever it is she is now. I'm not sure if she's face or heel or somewhere in between.
Fucking here, there, and everywhere. She's just known as the workhorse.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, at that point, Bailey's trying to fight a war on two fronts, and we know whether that's in the wrestling ring, out in the real world, or anywhere in between. It's never going to end well for the person that's trying to split their attention. Cora Jade ends up picking up a win on Bailey, and we're also treated to a clip of, or a small, very small clip of NXT General Manager Ava whispering to Julia.
Well, after this match, obviously, like, there was I don't know really how to kind of put this one out there. This match, as nice as it was to see, like, we both agree with NXT going straight into the first match to start off with, there wasn't really a lot in this match. Apart from, you had a couple of tiny spots that weren't, anything over the top. There was no really big sort of memorable moments for this match.
No, and I think a majority of that comes down to the fact that this was a grudge match. This wasn't Bailey going out giving a performance. This was Bailey wanting to go out and kick Cora Jade's head in, more or less. Especially considering the assault that Cora Jade laid in the week before. It was Bailey got a double serving of that from that kind of whoop ass that Cora Jade decided she was opening last week, and yeah,
it's to carry on this week to no avail. But yeah, we see a clip of Ava whispering to Julia, which I think, if I remember correctly, is kind of unveiled a little bit later as to what was said.
Well, it was sort of unveiled not a few minutes later, with Ava coming out trying to split up a fight, I believe, between the three women in the ring at the time, and
Bailey, Cora, and then Roxanne out there at the same time as well. So yeah,
I mean, the only one that was really sort of absent during all of this, and I won't say absent's probably the wrong word to use, was Julia herself, the defending champ. We know that up to this point, Bailey, Roxanne Perez, and Julia are in a triple threat match at Vengeance Day. Keep wanting to go Judgment Day, and it's obviously because of the faction. Apparently, I've lost the ability to speak coherently.
Definitely not a finisher called the Judgment Day.
Yeah, well, it's yeah. Let's not confuse me any further. It doesn't take much. But yeah, essentially, we find out that this whispering between Ava and Julia is basically Ava saying, yeah, we're going to expand your match a little bit. We're going to give you one more person to fight off. And in this case, it was turning a triple threat match into a fatal four-way. Not taking anybody away, but adding in Cora Jade, who apparently earned a last-minute spot in this match for the NXT Women's Championship.
Which is going to be an interesting one. We haven't seen a fatal four-way in a title match for a while, so I'm hoping we get something a little bit special from this entire occasion.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all hoping the same thing. It's certainly been built up to be a bit of a barn burning match, and I mean, we've got some some heavy hitters from NXT, even the main roster in that match. So the expectations are certainly there for it.
I must admit, it's going to be one of those. I think that will be the match of the card for Vengeance Day.
I mean, I would certainly hope so, and I'm sort of hoping that Cora Jade is there to add value rather than take it away, as traditionally, from what I've seen of NXT, especially when we've commented on episodes beforehand, it's a case that when they do these bigger matches, is that we tend to see a vast majority play more of a role, and then we've got somebody else that just sort of fills a spot. They're not really relevant to anything, but the way that they've built everything up so far is certainly showing that at least majority of them are going to be relevant. I mean, I'm not sure sort of how this Cora Jade angle is going to play into it all, but I'm hoping they've just not done it to sort of bulk out the paydays for superstars on the roster, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, if they have done it to do that, that is going to suck quite hard. And we have noticed, so we've mentioned it a few times, but Cora Jade seems to be the weak link. I'm just hoping what they don't do is play it so she comes out of this holding Julia's title. There's obviously in a fatal four-way, Julia does not need to be the one that gets pinned or submitted to lose her title.
I mean, realistically, in this match, I mean, not discounting anybody from this matchup, this is essentially a matchup for me. It's the one that won't be, but should be made more irrelevant in this matchup is Bayley. I don't see Bayley walking out of Vengeance Day with the NXT Women's Championship. She's only just qualified for the Elimination Chamber, and it's a case that it would not make sense to make her the NXT Women's Champion to then have her go on and compete in the Elimination Chamber. It just makes no sense at all.
No, it wouldn't make any sense doing that. And also, without trying to knock NXT, Bayley's above NXT. She doesn't need to be holding a title down there anymore. She's, in theory, all she's there for at the moment is just helping out the current roster, make some of them look stronger than they actually are.
That, and she's a draw. I mean, we've seen the reaction that Bayley gets from the NXT crowds, and she's there as 100%. She's there as a money earner.
Bayley is NXT, but she doesn't need to be. She's paid her dues. She's shown her way forward. She's held bigger and better titles on the main roster. Giving her the women's title for the NXT is a massive step down for her. I'd actually go as far to say it's quite a big insult to give it back to her, because she can and has had better.
It's a case that they can. It's more of a case that they can use her as a draw, but she's not reasonably going to win. It's not going to add anything to Bayley's character to be NXT Women's Champion again. Not from where I'm sat. I mean, the only two women I see possibly walking out of this fatal four-way as winners is either Julia retains or Cora Jade. No, I'm going to say Cora Jade takes it out, because Roxanne Perez, I think we're seeing a transition for Perez from NXT into main roster. As, if I'm not very much mistaken, I may be wrong, I believe Roxanne Perez herself has a match to qualify for the Elimination Chamber. And I believe that might be on Raw, potentially. So she seems to be being pushed towards Raw a little bit more. And I think they're very much testing the waters with whether they can bring Roxanne Perez up. And from what I'm seeing, the numbers look good. I've said before that Roxanne Perez is due a main roster bump, and I think they've chosen roughly about the right time to be able to do that.
I personally like. We've seen a few people being released from main roster to make space. I don't think it's for the likes of Roxanne Perez just yet. I think they're going to keep hold of her in NXT until possibly after WrestleMania. I think her call up will be the Raw after WrestleMania.
See, with the releases, I was very much the same. I'm very much sort of along the same lines as you. Is that are they going to bring anybody up? I think if they do put a hold on it, they've got to at least keep Roxanne Perez's name in the picture because I'll maintain. I think that with the right story, the right angle, if she's used in the right way, she could make a huge impact on either SmackDown or Raw. Doesn't matter which, but
Yeah,
it's got to be done correctly. It's not just going to be a, yeah, you're no longer on NXT, you're going to be on Raw, or on SmackDown, and then they do nothing with her.
I mean,
Because we've seen from the releases, one of the releases, they did exactly that. They took her out of NXT, brought her up to main roster, and then did fuck all with her. And the name escapes me.
oh, I think I know who you're talking about, but again, can't pull it off the top of my head.
No, I can't pull it off the top of my head either.
It's just, I think if you move her up now, I think it's too much. There's too much going on at the moment to be able to really give her the push that she deserves.
Blair Davenport. That was the name I couldn't think of.
Yeah, that's literally where I've just gone to Google while we were talking. But then if
Oh
you,
no, I got a screenshot of the releases because it was a case that we were umming and ahhing about how to address the releases and everything along those lines. Is that because the releases need to be addressed? Maybe something we'll come to a little bit later on. Just have a quick chat around them, but
yeah,
we'll see how we go. I think we're lingering on match one a little bit. We've got an entire card to get through, so we'll move on. I've
yeah.
got
Sol
a
Ruka and
locker room
Zarya.
promo. Yeah, so Sol Ruka and Zarya have been on a little bit of a run. They started off with a really strong win last week, which they've started talking about. And this is where, I mean, I'm introduced, certainly me, I'm introduced to a new character here in Nikita Lyons. Seems
Yeah,
to
it
be a
wasn't one
relatively
I'd
big
seen
name.
before.
Yeah, seems to be a relatively big name in NXT, but again, I have to point out that any episodes that we've done, any episodes that have been on Netflix since the Netflix era began, are the only NXT episodes I've ever been able to pull up. Anything else that I reference from before that time has either been researched or mentioned. That's the only way around it. But basically setting up for a match between her and Zarya later on in the card. And then we're switching over to in ring again, where we hear from our current men's NXT champion, Oba Femi. And I'm not going to lie, the guy's growing on me a little bit. I
Yeah,
really enjoy his entrance. I like I like the song, the way the entrance is choreographed. He's really getting over with me.
he's starting to kind of get in the right sort of positions for that as well. And considering we not really seen a massive amount in ring from him since he won the title, we've seen a defense, but we've not seen a huge amount from him, sort of in ring wise. A lot of promo stuff we've seen, and he's very good with the microphone. Um, I'm a little bit unsure when it comes to Obafemi about how they're going to build to push him further. Obviously, the guy is the NXT Men's Championship holder at the moment, but you can't just stop there. They've got to keep kind of progressing that character, and I'm starting to wonder what can they do with him apart from him being. Well, I'm hoping they don't turn him into NXT's version of Goldberg, where they just let him decimate what is quite a half decent roster at the moment.
Well, we've had it referenced on a few occasions that this isn't Obafemi's first title reign in NXT. I believe, if I remember correctly, he was previously the North American champion and lost that to Tony D'Angelo, who still remains the North American champion, but then picked up at the very first NXT sort of NXT episode, which was New Year's Evil. Came in, won the NXT Men's Champion, and started his reign from there. So we have seen the very beginning of his of the heavyweight champion reign, but never really saw anything from his North American Championship reign. Which
he also won last year's Iron Survivor Challenge as well, and he won the 2023 NXT Men's Breakout Tournament. So we're used to seeing him win. He's definitely a winning pedigree, but it's not something we've watched him do, if you get me.
No. And a lot of the matches that he's had, or the matches that I've seen so far on the Netflix era, have been, he's sort of weirdly come up from being behind. He sort of seems to get his ass kicked in the first few minutes and then seems to come up afterwards.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And that's, a guy that's built the way that he's built should not be coming up. It should be more of an early domination thing. If somebody gets the upper hand on him, it's a case that we go from there. But in this case, Obafemi's coming out talking about his match on Saturday at Vengeance Day, which is a triple threat. Triple threat for the men's NXT champion.
It's being booked as a triple threat match, but we all know how this is going to go down. And Obafemi even says it there. It's not going to be a triple threat. It's going to be a handicap match between him and A-Town Down Under.
Now, this is the odd thing, is that even during this promo, we have A-Town Down Under come out. They start basically confirming Obafemi's, I'm not going to call them fears, but hypothesis is that, they're going to work together, but them pair can't seem to keep straight who it is that they're pulling to win. They're both trying to win it out from under the other one and hoping that they'll still be able to work together at the same time. And I don't know. I think we'll see possibly some teamwork in the beginning, but it's all going to devolve down. It'll break down during the match.
If Obafemi doesn't win the match, and retain his championship, I think this could spell the end for A-Town Down Under. As if one of them's holding a title and the other one isn't, someone's gonna be a little bit jealous, and someone's gonna end up trying to kick someone's ass.
This could be potentially the end for A-Town Down Under regardless.
Yes.
They've not long been drafted. I think they were not drafted, transferred. It's a transfer window now, not a draft. And they were transferred, I think, from Raw to SmackDown, but then haven't made an appearance on SmackDown since, apart from an initial one to say, yeah, we're here, but then seem to have been inadvertently moved over to NXT instead.
Which is, it is a little bit I'm not entirely sure why they've done it either, to be fair.
I can certainly understand.
Signed to the Raw brand.
There's certainly a storyline aspect for both Grayson Waller and Austin Theory for them to have another run in NXT, as neither of them have had any singles success in NXT at all through multiple runs between the two of them. And we sort of went over this in a previous episode of Finishers and Factions Does NXT Anyway. I went into a fair amount of detail where I think I broke it down through individual runs and yeah, they've had some successes. They've had some really good matches, but never had any title success in NXT.
No.
But I think certainly tensions are rising between A-Town Down Under. I think there's definitely going to be some. I mean, there's obviously going to be some infighting. I think they're going to at least go into that match trying to take out Obafemi to begin with, and then they'll just try and sort of duke it out between the two of them. But we know it's not. We know they're not going to take Obafemi out and then him be out, and it's just then a singles match between the two of them. That's just not how it's going to work out. It never does.
No.
Best laid plans of mice and men and all that, but essentially, even during this promo, it seems as though a fight breaks out between Waller and Theory, which then spills over to both of them attacking
They played me with
Obafemi.
this bit. I generally thought we were going to see Grayson Waller and Austin Theory beat shit out of each other. I was kind of hoping they would, to be fair. And then they both went for Obafemi. I was like, you bastards.
Yeah,
No, I was really hoping they were about to start laying waste into each other. And like I said, the cracks have already appeared for A-Town Down Under. I think that's pretty obvious for anyone who's kind of watched it recently. How deep those cracks are, I think we're going to find out at Vengeance Day.
100%. It's certainly a match to keep an eye on. So I'll be keep my eyes peeled for that one. We went from that in-ring promo to a VT featuring Eddie Thorpe, who's basically seems to have picked a fight with Trick Williams recently. I mean, we saw him during Trick's match last week come out and lay into him well and truly with whatever that strap thing is that he's been toting around recently, and basically declares that he wants Trick Williams in a strap match at Vengeance Day.
And Trick Williams is obviously going to let him have it. You know, we both know there's a little bit of something between those two, and I think they have pretty much got to that point now where if they don't settle it, it's going to end up eating at both of them. So at Vengeance Day, like you said, they're going to settle that one in a strap match.
Yeah, definitely. And then from that promo, we went into the second match, which was so very chaotic, but chaotic in the best way possible.
I have absolutely zero notes on this one, apart from who was in the match, purely for the fact that A, it was a complete clusterfuck, and B, I got too engrossed in it.
So, because I know how this one's going to go, I'd love to hear who you have involved in this match.
Right, so you've got Hank and Tank, the No Quarter Catch Crew, and then Briggs and Inamura.
Okay, that was the one I thought you were going to trip up on. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, we've got. This was a triple threat tag team match, which again, it's NXT doing more than one adversary in a match, which sometimes can leave sort of one being a bit irrelevant to the overall story of the match type itself. This one came about from a lack of communication between Briggs and Inamura last week after they basically went to Fraxium and said, we want a title shot without actually ever having competed in a match together. And were basically told by the tag champs to go out and find an opponent, have a match, win it, and come back and see us. So Inamura and Briggs went off separately to find a match for themselves. Ended up coming back to Ava saying, yeah, I've got an opponent, and apparently so has he. And this is how a triple threat was born from it, really. So this was all the doing of Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura, all in a hunt for a tag champion opportunity.
Yeah, and the only thing I had a slight issue with this match, apart from it was a clusterfuck to take notes on, was that I really struggled to keep an eye on the tags, and you're gonna have to help me out here. But the No Quarter Catch Crew, Which 2 out of the 4 were actually in that match? Because I know Charlie Dempsey was on the outside. I remember seeing him, but he
So-
never made it into the ring, which
No,
leaves you with
Charlie
a couple
Dempsey
of
was not
extras.
involved. Charlie Dempsey had no involvement in the match other than coming out.
Yeah, so he
During their
literally
entrance.
and you saw him wander around the outside of the ring, but he didn't touch anyone, he didn't do anything to interfere. He was literally just part of an entrance.
Yeah, he was there as an appearance. He was completely irrelevant to the story of the match. Had nothing really to go through, but it's yeah. If me and you had issue trying to keep track of the tags in the match, I feel so sorry for that poor referee.
Oh my god. Yeah, no, that poor ref was fucked from the start. There was no
But
way he was keeping him.
I did manage to get a few very fleeting notes throughout this match. Briggs and Inamura sort of double team Tank from Hank and Tank, who manages to dodge both of them with a cartwheel in ring, which I found actually really impressive for somebody who's built the way that Tank is. I mean, he's got the name Tank. He is built like a fucking tank. It's
I just want to know when Seth
so-
Rogen signed for WWE. I'm not going to lie to you.
yeah, there is that. I think that is. I don't think that's Tank. I think that's Hank, who looks an awful lot like Seth Rogen, and it's all I can see is one of the stars of Pineapple Express in the ring whenever I look at him. But that's my issue. But yeah, I mean, the match itself was completely solid. It was just complete fucking chaos. Which, from what I know of the 3 teams involved, was never going to be anything other than chaos. And it just made it really difficult to take notes on. But the long story short of all of this chaos is that Briggs and Inamura actually managed to walk out of this with the win. And Briggs and Inamura are now facing Fraxium on Saturday for the
Vengeance
NXT
Day.
Tag Team titles.
Yeah, and it was an interesting one because Fraxium were obviously watching this match with bated breath to see, who and what was going to happen. And they kept referring to Fraxium having a title match at an NXT, not an NXT, the NXT Tag Team title holders having a match at NXT. No,
I know,
the
unheard
TNA. Sorry, they were defending against the TNA tag team a couple of weeks ago. So obviously we've seen them with the titles. We know that they defended that title against the TNA tag team, whose name I'm not actually sure.
So Fraxium have done quite a bit of defending on TNA programming recently. I think they've actually done 2 title defenses over on TNA in their normal match, in their normal episodic TV shows. I know one of them was versus the Nemeth brothers, Nick and Ryan Nemeth.
Yep.
That was last week or the week before, and then there was another one where they faced I can't think what the team was called, but both were successful title
Rascals?
defenses. And yeah, it seems that finally we're having Fraxium defend the NXT titles on an NXT program, which will actually be a treat, to be quite honest, because they seem to have spent more time on TNA recently than they did on NXT.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, they are trying to make the most of this contract that's been signed between TNA and WWE. There's just one match that I'd like to see. I'm not going to lie, where this contract is up, and we said this off podcast. The current TNA tag title holders are the Hardy Boys. Jeff's one of them. I'm not sure Matt's holding with him, but it'd be interesting to see if the Hardys defend a TNA title in WWE, because that pop when it goes would be huge.
Well, it'd be nice to see. I know one of the matches that's swirling around that they keep, the pair of them keep sort of hinting at is so the TNA tag titles, as far as I'm aware, are being held by both of the Hardy Boys,
Yep, they are.
Matt and Jeff. And they've even gone as far as to tease a future match between the Hardy Boys and Fraxium on at some point in the future. Whether that will be done in a WWE ring, whether that will be done in a TNA ring, is yet to be decided, I think. But
It would be
at
nice
the
to see.
moment, as much as that match would be nice to see, hopefully in a WWE ring, so we can talk about it more freely on here. But it's a case that Fraxium have got to refocus and make sure that they're zeroed in on Briggs and Inamura, because both are heavy hitters. Both aren't gonna be easy to take down by any means necessary. I mean, these guys have just taken down two other rough and tumble teams in No Quarter Catch Crew and Hank and Tank, and they're 100%. They've been saying they've been ready for weeks
And they've just
for a
proved
tag
it.
title match.
And they've just kind of proved that. So we get to see Fraxium up against Josh Briggs and Inamura in a few days.
Yeah, won't take long at all. So it'd be nice actually to see I don't believe we've seen Fraxium compete properly in NXT since the start of the Netflix era. I'm not sure. I have to go back through my notes, but
I don't think I've seen Fraxium wrestle while we've been. So unless they did last week while I was off ill, then we haven't
they
seen
didn't.
them.
No, but they definitely didn't. But yeah, so Briggs and Inamura versus Fraxium on Vengeance Day for the NXT tag titles. We'll comment on that when we do our coverage of Vengeance Day in a few days' time. But moving back to this week's NXT, we went from in-ring action to a backstage promo.
With Tony D'Angelo talking about his match a little bit later on against Ridge Holland for the North American Championship inside of a steel cage.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, apart from promoting the match, really, this promo didn't really sort of serve any other purpose. It didn't
It was a promo.
It didn't bring forward any sort of storyline or anything like that. Not as far as I can see. But the one thing I did notice is we had Izzy Dame in the background. She was there. Seems very much like she's very much part of the D'Angelo family, even though she's been claiming for so many weeks that she's not, and she's not having anything to do with them. She seems to be popping up with them an awful lot recently for somebody who's not involved whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a bit of a strange process, but I think we will see a little bit more of that conclude possibly at Vengeance Day, to be fair. Like, if not at Vengeance Day, it will be the next sort of PLE afterwards, I suppose.
So we'll come back to that a little bit later on as that develops a little bit more. But we went from there into match 3, which was the Heritage Cup Championship match title defense,
So
where we saw
Lexis King has changed the way the Heritage Cup works while he's currently holding it, which is a little bit of a pain because I've only just got used to the original Heritage Cup rules.
So I wasn't I wasn't necessarily mad at the fact that he'd changed the match rules or the way that the title's defended, as it does make it more of a traditional match type, whereas the Heritage Cup rules were sort of, I think they were possibly a little bit hard to follow for some people. So they've simplified it down. It does take a lot of the pomp and circumstance out of the Heritage Cup. I mean, the only sort of real difference between that and any other championship now is that you don't get a belt, you get a cup. But yeah, Lexus King trying to make his mark on the championship this time around, which is never really a bad thing. But he's facing somebody that we wouldn't normally see on WWE TV anymore in JDC, formerly known as Fandango.
Wow, we are seeing a lot of TNA the last few weeks within WWE programming. So, but yeah, a former WWE wrestler coming back and under a new name and with a new promotion, and actually, to be fair, with a decent gimmick. I'm not going to lie to you, I hated Fandango's gimmick.
Fandango was a very sort of. He got over to a point, but more because of his entrance theme than the actual wrestling. And because I remember when Fandango made his debut, he appeared in main roster matches. They were sort of very much squash matches. It wasn't anything sort of to write home about, but I remember WWE focusing on the fact that the way that his song was put together and everything like that, it was very much capturing the WWE universe to the point that it even made it as a Premier League, as a English Premier League sort of football chant at one point. I remember that video fairly vividly. I don't remember who the teams were that were involved in that match, but it was something that the crowd was chanting during the match, and it was captured and shown on WWE TV, which gave the Premier League probably quite a lot of exposure to maybe people that weren't that interested in it before. I'm thinking mainly Americans, but yeah, but this match itself, I mean, JDC came out and gave a good he gave a good showing. He came out, represented TNA, and did TNA very proud, in my opinion. But it was a case that I don't think JDC was ever really in any sort of contention to win the Heritage Cup, as that would have been the first time that a non-WWE superstar would have held a WWE title. To have won it on WWE programming would have been history making, admittedly.
Yeah, I think the first time they give a WWE title to a non-WWE wrestler will be a very big deal. So it was not going to be Fandango.
No. But the match itself was solid. I had no issue with the match. We know that Heritage Cup, for anybody that comes in to compete for the Heritage Cup, it's a very sort of technical based wrestling match. It's not full of heavy strikes or anything like that. It is, for all intent and purpose, it is a wrestling match. It is not a sports entertainment wrestling match, so to speak. But I mean, yeah, solid match. Can't be mad at it at all.
No, definitely not. And
now, I'm going to move on from this match just because it wasn't necessarily a highlight for me, but there is something that I've put this at the top of my page with the notes in it, and not sure exactly where it slotted into the running order for everything. I think we possibly may have bridged past it just a touch, but we saw a VT promo at some point during NXT of Javon Evans being medically cleared, but to compete at Vengeance Day, which was a stipulation put in place by Ava last week that Javon Evans could have Ethan Page at Vengeance Day if he was medically cleared. But the doctor that gave this medical clearance was saying that basically he very much risks his career stepping into that ring.
I mean,
Because
Javon Evans' jaw is fucked. Like, Ethan Page did a very, very good job on smashing that jaw. And, Ethan Page has done a pretty good job of smashing a few people around. We've seen him take out Javon Evans. We've seen him take out... I can't remember the guy's name now. We
saw him take out Cedric Alexander, who recently returned, but unfortunately was one of the ones that was released.
I really didn't see the point in that at all.
No, I theorised that it might have been just sort of like it would have... Not necessarily for the storyline, it would have hurt Cedric Alexander as a professional wrestler to have been released while out on injury. It wouldn't have looked good for WWE. It wouldn't have looked good for Cedric Alexander. So they gave him a match where he came back, gave a really strong performance as a way of saying to other promotions and trying to get him over as much as possible with other promotions, so that when he left WWE, left NXT, he had something to fall back on. It wasn't just going to be the case that, he was out on injury, he was released by a rather callous WWE, and that was it. Yeah. That was the way I looked at it, and maybe that's wrong for looking at it that way, but at the end of this VT promo, we have Ava pleading with Javon Evans to really sort of consider what's going on, and even has to go down the legal route of getting him to sign a liability waiver, basically covering WWE against, if he is maimed or anything like that, that WWE hold no liability for it whatsoever. It was his own choice, which from a business perspective, really smart move. Legal would have been happy with that. I really think that should have set off some red flags for Javon Evans, but apparently he's very much laser focused on trying to kick as many bells out of Ethan Page as humanly possible.
I mean, that would be a good match, and because that Javon Evans is not going to let Ethan Page get away with any stupidity. So I think, I'd like to say that I think they'll let Javon Evans win this one, just to give him a one over Ethan Page. Once his jaw is completely back to how it should be, I think we'll end up with another run at this storyline again.
Yeah. So as I said, I'm not sure, can't quite remember from when I watched it back where that VT promo sort of slots into everywhere else. But moving on from there, we'll get back into where the running order picked off. So we just left the match 3, which was the Heritage Cups Championship, which saw
King retained against JDC.
Yeah, 100%. We then went to a GM office promo where we saw Ava and Bayley arguing basically over Bayley getting another shot at Cora Jade, as I don't think Bayley felt she had a fair shake at the stick for it. But we never really hear what the response is for that, as Roxanne Perez makes her entrance shortly after the promo begins to almost bitch at the fact that this now is a fatal 4-way, that Roxanne Perez has got to go through at least 3 other women to try and get back the championship that she lost at New Year's Evil.
Which is kind of funny though, because she comes in, she starts bitching, and then Ava points out that actually it's her own fault. If you'd kept yourself to yourself and stayed in the locker room, we wouldn't be having this problem. It'd still only be 3 of you at Vengeance Day.
Yeah, which, do you know what? I can't really argue with Ava over. It would have been a case, I think, if Bayley had been allowed to continue her match to the theorized sort of completion that we were going for, then yeah, 100%. Bayley would have come out on top. Cora Jade wouldn't have earned the opportunity to make that triple threat into a fatal 4-way. but this was all because Roxanne Perez couldn't resist having a bit of a poke at Bailey.
Well, yeah, and she's had a fair few of them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we see during this promo that sort of Perez then sort of regroups, redoubles her effort, and pledges to become a 3-time NXT champion. And Bailey sort of responds in a bit of a juvenile way, but it would be juvenile if anybody else did it.
It's Bailey. It's fine.
But Bailey points out that Perez has never looked better when she was dressed like Bailey, like classic Bailey, but then goes to call her an ugly idiot and walks out. That's the bit I find a bit juvenile, but it would have been juvenile if anybody else had done it, and not so juvenile because Bailey did it, which feels a bit like a double standard. But
it's kind of amusing.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be interesting to see if Bailey still fits into that old ring gear because
yeah,
you think the time has changed from the Bailey being a hugger to now. I'm surprised she managed to find it, to be honest with you. And the travelling she's doing, it must have taken some time to get that out of the suitcase somewhere.
Well, it'd be in a WWE locker somewhere, wouldn't it? It's somewhere in deep. It would have been somewhere in deep storage. It wouldn't have been anything Bailey would have been allowed to keep, especially that early on in her career.
It's her outfit. They all own their own costume side of things.
Yeah, but some of the older gimmicks get put into the WWE vault, as they like to refer to it. I mean, a lot of Undertaker's previous outfits are in the WWE vault. It's only a few bits and pieces that superstars themselves are actually allowed to keep hold of.
Yeah,
but
Undertaker outside of a wrestling ring in sports this week as well, which was quite nice.
yeah, I mean, we saw Mr. Mark Calloway at the Super Bowl this week, I believe, with Shane O'Mac.
He was there as a guest of Mr. McMahon himself.
Yeah, who obviously is it's come to light this week that the main criminal case, at least against Vince McMahon, has been dropped. He's that's no longer being pursued, which I mean is good for Vince McMahon.
Maybe not good for WWE, but
yeah. Well, I don't see him coming back at this point.
Yeah,
I don't see him playing any active role in the WWE now. Not with the success that WWE is now seeing under Paul Levesque's leadership.
And with their move to Netflix as well, their ratings have gone through the goddamn roof. So it's definitely been a positive business change from the guys in the main office at WWE headquarters.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, plus WWE saving so much money and not having to give out hush payments anymore. So it works out well for everybody.
It does. It does.
But yes, anyway. Coming on back, we saw just towards the end of that Office promo that Cora Jade basically comes in, makes the same claim as Perez, and Perez don't like it. She is coming off as a bit of a spoilt child at the moment, but I think that's sort of where they're planning on taking her character. Is we'll see how that sort of all plays out at Vengeance Day on Saturday. But we go from the GM office into match 4.
Now, we've mentioned both these names already. I do not think we've seen Zarya fight yet, and I know we haven't seen much from Nikita Lyons. So for me, this was definitely an opening into some new characters that we've not seen, that we could actually have, it's helped freshen it up a little bit by bringing those few extra names and faces in there. And just to throw it out there, Zarya looks scary as fuck.
Yeah, I mean, Zarya, we saw her in tag team action with Sol Ruka last week, where they walked out victorious. So we have seen a little bit of Zarya in ring, and she's
I
every
missed
bit
the
as
last
scary in the ring as she looks, to be quite honest.
due to my battle with some germs last week. I didn't actually get around to seeing that match. Not going to lie to you, I haven't watched any of last week's programming. I was too busy trying to feel better.
Yeah, I mean, one part of this match was Zarya sort of powering out of a cinched in camel clutch. I mean, this sort of proves the power that is behind Zarya to be able to do something like that is is otherworldly almost. But this match came off to me feeling a little bit squashy.
I had that
It
written
wasn't.
down.
It wasn't an out and out squash match, but not like we've seen where we saw in the main roster with people like Ryback, where he was coming out and basically just squashing local talent week in, week out. This was there was a little bit of fight in it, but it was still very much this is Zarya. This is what she does basically.
We got an opportunity to see. Well, I got an opportunity to see Zarya. I was actually quite impressed by what I did see. I'm intrigued for future reference to see if we get to see her go up against some of the main roster powerhouses. I think a match between Zarya and Nia Jax could be a very interesting sort of
Yeah, as long as the
match to come
story's
by.
built correctly.
Yeah,
If
it's
they
not
can
going to be a
build the
shit.
match properly, it would be a phenomenal match to see.
Yeah, and by the you saw her come out looking for some of those heavy hitting moves. At one point, she was looking to pop off a power bomb and got countered into a. I've put down head scissors, but I'm pretty sure it was a Hurricane Rana that she ended up getting it countered by. Which is not something I expected to see from either of them, because none of them are the smallest of superstars. They're both quite big superstars. So to see those sort of moves that you don't normally see from guys of that sort of size, strength, and stature was really interesting.
Oh, definitely. But yeah, I mean, the whole match sort of paled to me only because it did come out feeling really squashy. I'm just not. I wasn't a fan of the match because of how short it was. It could have been more. They were evenly matched. It could have been a more competitive match. It could have felt less squashy, and it just did.
Yeah. One.
But we'll move on from there as we went from in-ring action to backstage promo, where we saw Fallon Henley, Jasmine Nix, and JC Jane sort of confronted backstage by Kalani Jordan, who is trying her absolute best not to be the sort of Taylor Swift of the wrestling world. I mean, we've seen certainly a different side to Kalani over since last week. It's a very sort of angry Kalani Jordan we're dealing with at the moment, and yeah, she seems to think that she's due another title shot at with Fallon Henley.
Everyone in the road to WrestleMania believes they're due a title shot, and unfortunately, Kalani Jordan's not the only one, because Jada Parker decided that she also thinks she deserves a shot at that women's North American title. So,
Well, it wasn't just her that got involved. It was we saw Ashante Adonis come in and basically speak for his woman, Carmen Petrovic, and come in and stake her claim to to Fallon Henley's title as well. And yeah, they were all sort of just left to figure it out between them, and I'm interested to find out how that would
how that goes from there.
I mean, if you're going to read into it in a way that we probably should, I think when they're left to figure it all out, I think we're going to end up with Carmen versus Jada versus Kalani for a number one contenders role to face Fallon Henley for her title.
I mean, that could be one way it goes. I mean, with the way that the booking decisions are being taken in NXT recently, we could just end up with a fatal four-way for the North American Women's Champion.
You might as well just turn it into a battle royale at this point. If you want to go and stand in the ring. Last one wins.
Yeah, this is it. We went from backstage into a VT. Plenty of VTs in this week's NXT, I will be honest. But went into a VT promo where Ethan Page reacts to Javon Evans being cleared for competition.
Ahead of their now match at Vengeance Day.
Yeah, and I mean, Page has basically said that he's going out to end Javon Evans' career. He's not going to settle for anything less.
Pretty much already done it, to be fair, with that jaw. I mean, we've seen he broke the jaw originally. We saw him absolutely lay waste into Javon Evans with one punch a fortnight ago, 3 weeks ago now. Where Javon Evans came out to help the person whose name I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, I can't quite remember.
Busted by Ethan Page. We had this same Dante. It was Dante's ankle that got that was getting busted by Ethan Page with a steel step. So obviously Javon Evans has come out to try and save Dante being smacked in the mouth for the privilege of. And we've seen him a few times. This match at Vengeance Day is gonna be incredible, like absolutely off the wall.
It's definitely been built the right way. It has to be. We're hoping that it's going to live up to the hype.
I definitely hope so. And we know that if I say we know, I've not seen a lot of Javon Evans. I'm just hoping that Javon Evans has got that little bit of something special to him when we see that match.
Yeah, I mean, this will be a first exposure to Javon Evans wrestling for both of us, realistically, is that neither one of us has any idea what to expect from him. I've seen some clips of what he's done in the past. It's very high flying. I mean, I would expect nothing less from somebody who's built the way Javon Evans is. He's not what I would call a Vince McMahon guy. He's not built like he could rip the ring apart with his bare hands, but he's obviously there for a reason. So he can more than hold. I'm sure he can more than hold his own against Ethan Page, and who knows? We'll see what happens at Vengeance Day. But we go from that VT to something we don't see in NXT at all. This might be the first time, and I think the only reason this wasn't done in ring is because we see in the background as this happens, they are setting up for the main event match at this point. And it's an arena side promo done from the little sort of raised platform they have in the Performance Center for NXT, where Sarah Schreiber interviews Trick Williams after apparently found the baby oil room in Diddy's mansion.
Yeah. Wow.
That man was oil. That man could have slid through. He could have been forced through a keyhole without needing any further lubrication.
Yeah. No. Fuck's sake. Yeah. No. Trick Williams definitely found the baby oil in that one, and he came out to talk to Sarah Schreiber about the challenge that Eddie Thorpe had thrown out for the strap match at Vengeance Day, and like we said earlier, this is where Trick Williams basically goes, "Yeah, go on then, we go and fight." You know, we've seen over the last few weeks that Eddie Thorpe has screwed Trick Williams over a number of times, one of them being in a title match to try and get his NXT title back off Obafemi, and it didn't go to plan. So
No, definitely
we've got
not.
this strap match, and I'd like to be able to say I know what a strap match is, but I'm guessing just from what we've seen so far, it's an opportunity for Eddie Thorpe to beat whatever he can beat out of Trick Williams with that nice long piece of leather that he's walking around with. It's not actually a title, but looks like it would hurt if you got hit with it anyway.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Eddie Thorpe's last attack on Trick Williams saw him hit Trick Williams literally right on the back of the leg with it, and the snap that thing made was horrific. Realistically, it sounded gruesome, but it's that strap match should be an interesting one to watch, because I don't think, not at least to my memory, I've ever heard or seen a strap match before. I mean, I've seen a tied together match where they're basically tied together on I think it's like a 6 or 7 foot length of rope, and they have to wrestle a match that way. And yeah, just
Right.
a bit of an odd concept that I'm interested to see at Vengeance Day.
Yeah, so I have just thrown in into Google what a strap match is.
It feels like it would be a very dangerous Google search. I'm not going to lie.
And no, I made sure I put in WWE strap match first, just so we didn't get anything else pop up. We have had, by the looks of it, a fair few of them in history over the years. It basically sees two competitors attached on either end of a strap/restraint to keep one competitor from running away from the other. The actual strap is a legal object to use in the match, and the contest is usually regarded as a no disqualification match. So the picture it has got here is Daniel Bryan with Bray Wyatt at the Royal Rumble.
It's not a match type that I know that WWE do very often, but now you've described it, I know that AEW have done a few of these as well.
Yep, I've also got another image here of Sheamus and Mark Henry doing one. And Drew McIntyre was involved in one in Extreme Rules in 2002 against Karrion Kross. So we've had a few of them. They've just, I'm guessing they've gone under different names as such.
Quite possibly.
But apparently Hulk Hogan, Vader, Sting, Stone Cold, The Rock, and Triple H have all taken part in strap matches.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Now, one of the bigger news stories of NXT this week was what happened next. And
so, as we've all seen on wrestling social media, there have been a series of releases going out from not just WWE, but AEW as well, which I thought was going to open up some of the slots that had been left by WWE's releases in main roster. Did not expect to see this one pop up at NXT. And this is not a guy that I know of too much, so I'm going to I'm guessing Adam's probably done more research than I have on this specific gentleman.
So surprisingly enough, I haven't looked into. So we saw the announcement that Ricky Starks, formerly of AEW, has made his way onto NXT. This felt very sort of off the cuff and came with massive crowd pop to see Ricky Starks. In fact, I remember sitting watching this go out. It's one of the very few that I've watched go out live, and this is how out of the loop with Ricky Starks I am, is that I could hear the crowd chanting Ricky, and I could see him, I could hear him. The commentary team frustratingly did not mention who it was. I had to take to Google afterwards to find out who this was for the purposes of my notes. But yes, in the days that have followed, I've seen quite a few bits and pieces where so apparently Ricky Starks has been quite unhappy over in AEW, has been asking for his release, where Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, has basically been telling him, no, I'm not releasing you. Obviously, Tony Khan has eventually given him his release. And as far as I'm aware, AEW do not operate a 90 days no compete clause or anything like that WWE have done in the past. I mean, Ricky Starks is NXT, and
It's for now. So NXT have filed trademarks for 12 new in-ring names. And according to Cultaholic, which is obviously quite a big wrestling website, they believe that Ricky Stark could end up being known as Osiris Griffin in NXT.
oh
So
right, okay,
I'm not entirely sure if there is going to be an issue with naming and copyright reasons. At the moment, he is listed on WWE's internal roster as Ricky Starks, but according to the website, they believe he wasn't referred to as Ricky Starks during his debut because they want to try and repackage him, so to speak.
Well, he wasn't referred to as anything other than I can't believe he's here.
Yes, the WWE worked on the side of caution due to an agreement to utilize Stark's names and trademarks not being in place. Starks owns the trademarks to his name and his absolute moniker, and WWE often organise deals to license the trademark from the talent if they don't want to undergo a name change. So there's probably some paperwork being done somewhere by some lawyers and legal aspects to see what they're going to be doing there. But we will bring that sort of up to you guys as we find out more over the next couple of episodes, I'm guessing.
yeah, and as I say, this felt sort of very off the cuff. It didn't feel like it was planned this way. I'm not sure if the ring crew trying to assemble the cage around the ring for the main event was were running into some difficulties in being able to get it up in time, but it's a case that I think they were trying to play for time a little bit, and this is where Ricky Starks just happened to be in the building. They were like, "Do you know what? Go out, cut a 2-3 minute promo, give us a bit more time. We'll play it off as what's going on," because nobody seemed to know that this was going to happen. I think even the camera crews were a little bit taken aback.
Yes, he came out of the side,
yeah,
didn't he? He came out of the
yeah,
crowd,
this is
which
it.
is a bit weird. And to be fair, like you said, Ricky Starks then had been released like 36 hours beforehand by AEW. So whatever was going on there was completely like, oh shit, the paperwork's been signed. We didn't expect that to happen. Right, go on, go do something.
Yeah,
He looked
and
awkward as fuck.
it gave a viral moment. Don't get me wrong. It really drew some attention to NXT this week. I mean, Ricky Starks is part of NXT. Whether he's under that name or not is a different question altogether. But we then go from whatever that was to a backstage promo between Stephanie Baker and Julia, wishing each other luck for their matches ahead of Vengeance Day. Obviously, we know Julia is now involved in a fatal four-way to defend her title, and Stephanie Baker is competing against Fallon Henley for the North American Women's Championship on Saturday also.
Yeah. Which then led us into another backstage promo between Kyle Dixon, and not Kale Dixon, sorry, and Andre Chase. I'm not entirely sure what the deal with Andre Chase is. I know obviously at one point he was part of Chase University, but he's not really done much in the last month while we've been, last 6 weeks while we've been doing this podcast.
Well, this is only the second time he's appeared on NXT television since NXT was brought over to Netflix. So anybody like us that's come to NXT is with completely fresh eyes. They're seemingly trying to tease a possible return for Chase U or some form of Chase U, but yeah, not really seeing the draw to this. They're very much relying on a history that I think they're hoping that people will go back and either research or go back and watch and everything along those lines. I'm waiting to see what it is they're going to do with all this with all this Chase U hype that they're trying to deliver at the moment, because I'm not 100% certain. But yeah, I mean, moving on from there, we move on to the main event match, which I know is a cage match for the North American NXT Championship. Nice to see the North American Championship getting a main event spot. Seeing as how this is the second title defense that we had on the card for this time round, and this was Ridge Holland versus Tony D'Angelo. Tony D'Angelo being the defending champ. And I'm not sure. Me and Rich had a discussion about this after off podcast, but I'm not sure I would technically class this as a cage match, only because cage matches, to my knowledge, are normally won by escaping the cage, either through the door or or over the top. Whereas that was just not the case. This was more like essentially like a Hell in a Cell match, more so, but not given the space around the outside of the ring. And I mean, even the cage itself, I mean, don't get me wrong, I can understand why the superstars weren't going over the top of that cage, because that cage was rickety as fuck.
Yeah. No, I understand we don't see many of these match types, but you'd have thought whoever put that cage together, if you'd have leant on it or farted too closely to it, it looked like it was going to fall over. So the fact that they were trying to have a match with two big blokes, no, I'm good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a case that, don't get me wrong, during the course of the match, the guys get thrown against the side of the cage and it does manage to hold its own, but it's, yeah, just not the quality I would have come to expect, especially in a main event match. The fact that you could have secured that cage so much better by putting cable ties at the top on the top corners of those cage panels, and it would have been far more secure than it was at that present moment in time. If I were a superstar either in that match or the D'Angelo family around the outside of that match, it's a case that I'd have been looking at that thinking, fuck, that's going to come down on me. It's just my luck. It'll come down right on my fucking head. And yeah, it just just seems a bit odd. But we got a few decent moments during this match. There were lots of dirty tactics being used, which sort of is par for the course at this point. Ridge Holland manages to get an early thumb to the eye of Tony D'Angelo, and actually Ridge Holland looks pretty dominant throughout this match. Not really not seeming as though he's going to have much trouble in claiming the win, but D'Angelo definitely comes back strong. And I mean, as I mentioned, the D'Angelo family are around the outside of the ring. We've got Izzy, Dame, and Stax, who introduced sort of a crowbar to the match at one point, which gets used actually quite sparingly during this match. I mean, if I'm competing for a championship and somebody introduces a weapon, I'm using the hell out of that thing before either my opponent breaks or the weapon breaks. It's one of the two. But yeah, the essentially the match itself was relatively. I'm not going to say it's unremarkable because there were lots to sort of comment on it. There were lots of spots in it and things like that. Lots of big moves, and it just felt a bit lackluster. The match itself. I mean, the long story short of the match is that Tony D'Angelo ends up retaining his championship, wins, delivers a thumb to the eye, followed by a power bomb to retain by pinfall. But this felt a little bit sort of steal a victory for the champion, and it's more so about what happens after this. It's a case that Holland ends up outside of the cage to attack the family, and this is where part of the family are taken out. Holland ends up attacking, I think it was Stacks and the other one. I can't remember what. I never remember what his name is because they don't reference him very often. It's something I don't really remember.
It's Rizzo, isn't it?
No, Rizzo's the female member of the D'Angelo family. Yeah, the name of the guy escapes me. Again, they don't focus too heavily on him, so I'm not really prone to remembering people's names in that sense. But
Yeah.
they're taken they're taken to the back by Ridge Holland, and we don't really see much of them after that point. Now, this leaves sort of Tony D'Angelo pretty defenseless in the middle of the ring, with only sort of Rizzo there with him. We then see Sean Spears, Nico Vance, and Jensen appear seemingly from out of the crowd. And this is where I said that we'll sort of discuss Izzy Dame's involvement, because this is where Izzy Dame actually ends up turning on the Tony D'Angelo and Rizzo, and seemingly siding with Sean Spears and his cronies, as they are very much referred to. And yeah, I mean, Rizzo and D'Angelo more so are just completely decimated in the ring, having been locked in the cage with all four of these individuals. They absolutely go to town on D'Angelo. And yeah, he's very much left prone with these guys stood over him to finish the night with. The only other thing to mention is that after we see this, we go to a Vengeance Day promo, which is followed by this color card that seems to have been appearing at the end of it, at the end and in the background of NXT, followed by some face masks, which I think is trying to allude to who these little VT promos these little VT promo things are sort of urging us to, or trying to give us clues as to who is going to be debuting on NXT at Vengeance Day. And yeah, I'm still completely clueless.
Yeah.
Not a clue, but it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, and find out we will when Finishes and Factions goes to Vengeance Day on Saturday, the 15th of February.
Yes, so that sort of brings us to the end of NXT, and well, certainly to the end of my notes for it. And yeah, all we can obviously say is thank you guys for tuning in. The next time you'll be hearing from us is NXT. No, not NXT. It will be Finishers and Factions does SmackDown, which is due to go out on Friday, and we'll then be doing an episode for Vengeance Day, which is taking place from Washington, D.C.
It certainly is. Right, well, I think I've got everything, Adam. Is that everything from you as well?
Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
Right, well, I will see you for the next episode then, my good sir. Good night.